It's time to unravel the hidden mysteries of the universe. Time to uncover the truth hidden beneath the veil of lies. Time to transport your mind from the perverted matrix and connect with your higher consciousness into the world of the divine paradigm. The divine paradigm. And now your hosts of the Divine Paradigm, Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin.
I like that. Welcome everybody, aloha. This is Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin on the Divine Paradigm on KCOR Radio at kcorradio.com. And we have a very special guest that we have at least a couple times a year, at least once a year, but try to have her at least a couple times a year because she's so fascinating. Betsey Lewis, who is an author, internationally renowned psychic, and Earth Mysteries investigator. She began experiencing the paranormal at 8 months old. By age 7, she was seeing spirits and receiving visions of the future, now happening worldwide. And over 40 years, she has investigated angels, aliens, UFOs, cattle mutilations, and other Earth mysteries. And she practices Reiki, Kriya Yoga, astrology, tarot, numerology, and regressive hypnosis. She attended Native American sweat lodge ceremonies, vision quests, and powwows throughout the Northwest for over 10 years, where she was mentored by Western Shoshone spiritual leader Corbin Harney and Oglala Sioux ceremonial leader Ed Maga'a Eagle Man on the natural way of life of honoring Mother Earth. And she provides intuitive readings for an international clientele. And I see that she's been on lots of shows, including ours, but Coast to Coast AM and KTBB Noon Show, KIVI Morning Show, all kinds of Fringe, Ground Zero, and other popular talk radio shows and television shows. And she has a new book, and we're very excited about this subject, Ancient Serpent Gods, the Ancient Connection to Reptilian Dinosaurs. And we're going to discuss that, and we'll touch on the other books, but this is the main focus for this show. This is new book. Did nuclear warfare exist millions of years ago? Has Earth always been dominated by ancient serpent gods? A number of paleontologists hypothesized, sorry, I got really tiny print here, that if the 150 million year old dinosaur had survived an extinction event 65 million years ago and continued to evolve, they'd be the dominant creature on Earth. Suppose a species of intelligent dinosaurs continues to live beneath our feet. So now renowned Earth Mysteries investigator B.J. Lewis offers compelling evidence that dinosaurs did not vanish but became what millions of abductees identify as UFO greys and reptilian aliens. And we're also going to discuss the Anunnaki. Sasha, what would you like to say?
Okay, yeah, this is a very interesting phenomenon that in our field, general, we see that Ray Hernandez and others have said we all come together, things about ghosts, near-death experiences, what's happening on inner Earth, extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, archetypes, the Anunnaki, experiencers, and even the whole Earth and gods and nature all have something to communicate, but they've been in such separate categories that I'm reminded when I studied undergraduate psychology, the professor was talking about how these pigeons that ate a certain kind of worm would always turn to the right in a maze, and when the professor said, "I got it made," and he found out that it was a certain kind of worm that they ate, and so the student said, "Well, how do you know which worm it is?" And the professor said, "Well, I don't know that. I'm a bird man, a pigeon man, not a worm man." But now there's a convergence. John Lath, Michael Sala, Len Kasdan, and myself have been extensively looking at the overwhelming evidence that there is an inner Earth, that there are civilizations in the inner Earth, that they've been added to periodically throughout history, and that there are many, many different kinds of people that have both the ability to have what we would call anti-grav crafts. They go into the inner Earth and go to the stars, and it's all coming together. And Betsey is one of the great bring it together people in this field, and the ancient Nagas, all the stories are converging, and Betsey has got a big piece of the puzzle of how it all fits together. So I'm really looking forward to this presentation.
Welcome to the Divine Paradigm, Betsey.
Thank you so much. It's great to be on your show again, Sasha and Janet.
Betsey!
Thank you so much. It's crazy, what you were talking about, how it's all coming together now. And what's really strange is, now, and you've probably gone through this too, how, everything started with Eric von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods in 1968, and, about ancient astronauts and ancient aliens, and that's all we read anymore, all the authors out there on the same bandwagon. And, it's like even the TV shows and documentaries, it's all about aliens. But suppose that they aren't extraterrestrial, but they're terrestrial beings all this time. And I'm not saying that aliens don't exist, but I would say a big percentage of the abductees and UFOs are from our inner Earth, like you're talking about.
Well, that's a fascinating theory. I think that's a spurious dichotomy. I think it is a little bit of both, mainly because I am an experiencer and work with experiencers. Mm-hmm. But we really don't know where everything comes from, all these beings come from. They're definitely outside of our paradigm of what our major, operating system is for the planet, and the truth that the governments or world leaders are presenting to us as our system of existence. Go ahead, Sasha.
Yeah, well, Corey Good and Len Kasdan and others have talked about how the people of inner Earth, many of whom, the Bodlanders and the people in New Schwabenland, all have anti-grav craft that are capable of interstellar and certainly travel within our solar system, and that our clandestine military, for that matter, has gone to both places, the inner Earth and the outer, and it's a spurious dichotomy. Corey Good actually says that some of the inner Earth people have been saying that they're extraterrestrials as part of their deception program. So it's all converging, and what you're doing is breaking down the barrier to separation, and we're seeing how all these phenomena are connected.
So let's hear your theories.
Okay. Well, I thought there's always been a missing piece of the puzzle. And some time ago, I read a book by David Barclay. He's a UK author who wrote a book, I believe it was in the 1980s. It goes back a ways, Aliens, the Final Answer. And he believed that the dinosaur never became extinct, that a species of dinosaur actually survived, went underground, survived the extinction event, went underground, and they were very intelligent. The dinosaur existed for 150 to 180 million years. That's longer than humans have even been around. And to think that, that they just all perished is, just incredible. So he believes that they did continue evolving. And we know now what paleontologists say, that dinosaurs were not the slow-moving, stupid creatures that we've always been told they were. In fact, they were fast. Some think they were mammals. They were warm-blooded, and they did have an incredible intelligence. And they said there's several authors that believe, like Robert Baker, believe that if they had survived the extinction event, then they would be the dominating creatures on our planet. Can you imagine? So I believe they're here, and they've always been here. Now, we might be talking about the Anunnaki, because a lot of people believe that they're reptilian. So maybe they came here millions of years ago. Some of them stayed and went underground where they exist, because look at all the UFOs that go into water and come out of water. They enter, they exit water, large bodies of water, like oceans, lakes. I had a friend who saw a UFO dive into one of the lakes up in Oregon. So, that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay. Sash, you want to go
Well,
first?
just that in some of the accounts that I've read, some of the Dracos, reptilians, made a deal that the Anunnaki, in making the hybrid race, that's us, gave
Mm-hmm.
a certain amount of their genes so that we would be fierce and warrior-like, and that we
Right.
all have this component, particularly in our brain stems, which is to survive,
Mm-hmm.
to be a warrior, and to fight when we need to.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, I think that they may dominate. They may be the reptilian species that's behind, the royals and the Illuminati, but
Mm-hmm.
still trying to figure it out. And I personally, and I won't take over the show, but I had an experience as a contactee with a large reptilian, the dragon. I have a presentation I'm doing in Ontario this coming weekend. The dragon at the end of at the center of time, yeah, and it's about how I went to an underwater installation in Johnson Atoll, and I met the mother dragon. And what she was saying was that they have all the different variations of reptilian, as they're all part of her children. They're all related to each other. So just like we have geckos to dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Right.
there's
Right.
a intelligent bipedal, walking variation on the theme, but that's not to say that the giant dragons aren't intelligent either. So we have to relook at it, rethink of how
We do. We
species
do.
incarnate and what is intelligence.
Have you had any direct experience with reptilians, Betsy?
No, but I've had friends that claim that they have seen humans that actually seem to morph into reptilians, and their eyes changed into slits, and they were totally freaked.
Yeah.
Have you had friends or people that you know that have
Well,
had that happen?
I've had experiences with reptilians, which I'm talking about in my presentation. From about age 4 till 12, I had I kind of like a duel with the reptilian who it felt like he was trying to suck my soul out of my third eye chakra. But
Oh,
in
geez.
therapy and under further hypnosis, I just realized that he had a different telepathic communication vibratory frequency than the Greys, and it was more intense. And so when I encountered that after having communicated with the Greys for many years, it just felt like I was going to die, but I actually didn't. I learned how to communicate with them.
Yeah, and Misha Johnson has been helped, assisted many times by a reptilian who has taken her under its scales, so to speak.
Scales. I like that, Sasha. That's a good one. I'll remember. I'm going to write this down.
Okay, that's a keeper. So then there's Joanne Richards, whose husband Michael Richard. What's his name? Mark Richards. I think we'll start with an M. Was in the Battle of Dulce, and the one that kind of rescued them before they all got blown up was a kind of a raptor type reptilian who was intelligent. So we're getting all these stories.
Right.
There are kind and loving and reptilians.
Not all of them. Well, not all of them.
Not all,
There's a
Yeah,
variety. Just like of any species, there's a variety.
yeah, right. Good and bad, malevolent, benevolent, and certainly we're like that too. But when you think about just about every ancient civilization worshipped serpent gods, and they're found in the Bible. When Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, there was that serpent. There are temples with dinosaurs on it in Cambodia. You've probably heard of the Ica stones in Peru. They were discovered in 1562. 11,000 strange carved stones were discovered there. And what they show is, this is amazing, they show dinosaurs, humans riding dinosaurs, humans getting eaten by dinosaurs, dinosaurs giving birth to the young like mammals, brain surgery, transfusions. It even shows dinosaurs nursing their young. And that's, we're told that we didn't exist millions of years ago with the dinosaur. And I think that's really interesting that, if the dinosaur, the serpent or the reptilian, created us, let's say, that we were an experiment, it would explain a lot of things with our temperament, and just the things that go on, like the split mind. No other creature has schizophrenia, the split mind, like we do. And there's just so many other things that can't be explained with our DNA. Where did we come from? How did we suddenly appear? How did we learn the things that we learned? We had to have been on this earth much longer. And who created us? I know a lot of people will say, well, it was God, but suppose that there is an intelligent creature that knew how to work with genetics, DNA, took us from whatever, maybe their DNA and maybe the monkey DNA, and created humans. And we were part of their slaves. I know that's part of the Anunnaki legend, right? That we were taken as slaves. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's interject a little bit. The order of the snake, the serpent, was Enki's secret society. So there's a tie there. Just because somebody's a serpent or a reptilian doesn't mean that their appearance will be like a serpent or reptilian, because DNA can be combined. You could have cats that glow because we are doing the same thing that the Anunnaki did, but also the planet Serpo race were saying that really no one owns your DNA, that belongs to kind of like God's source creation, that we mix and match, and that's how we create the evolution of consciousness and different types of avatars in which souls can incarnate and experience existence. Go ahead, honey.
So it's the symbol of Enki is the caduceus, or the serpents, which indicates that he was a part of putting the serpent, those genes into the slave species, so that they would be hardy. It's really interesting. One of the current theories is something called simulation theory, which says all the synchronicities that we seem to see are really part of a much, much larger organization of experiments of the combinations of consciousnesses that particularly make Earth a really interesting place for all kinds of interdimensionals and extraterrestrials, because we breed with almost everything. When Homo sapiens come across some new group of people, the first thing they do is try to kill them or make babies with.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look at the things we're doing now with cloning and genetics. Hitler was doing that too, Mengele, and in his experiments with genetics. And, where did all that come from? And look what we've done in just the last 100 years. Incredible steps, So, I kind of think that, we know the giants existed.
Yeah.
Thousands of years ago, they roamed the earth. There were all kinds of things going on our planet. And it's amazing that the alien whole hypothesis, and what we are told, there's just all this disinformation from the military, our governments, and everybody. Why would they lie to us unless they know that there are, reptilian dinosaur, the intelligent dinosaur underneath our feet? I mean, can you imagine that if people knew that there were beings underneath our planet? How frightening would that be? And, it could be part of our religious beliefs too. When you think about it, maybe they have, they know about holographic inserts. They have created this whole religious thing for us. I'm not saying that Jesus didn't exist, and a lot of things in the Bible aren't true, but I'm saying that they have used us because they know what we believe in, and they use our beliefs to control us.
Well, I think that's true. There's a lot of psychological manipulation with the religious propaganda and the
Hmm.
twisting of the information. They do with everything. They whenever a new
Sure.
thought process comes out in a different belief structure, they go in there and they hijack it for their own benefit. Even
Co-optation.
they co-opt it. Even the New Age kind of spiritual belief gets
Hmm.
co-opted in many ways. I want to revisit. Did you say? Because we were talking fast, that the dinosaurs. Where was it where they had the depictions of the dinosaurs and
In South America. Whereabouts?
where was that again?
Oh, that's in Peru. They and yeah, the 1562 these rocks were found. They're carved rocks, actually, and they found over 11,000 of them. And at first, they thought maybe they were faked, but there's just no way. Maybe some of them have been faked through the years. But what's really interesting is that. These Ica stones, it's ICA stones, are depicted standing upright, these dinosaurs, rather than having their legs splayed out like a lizard-like
Ah,
position. And according to dinosaur experts, this is dead on accurate. Isn't that amazing that they would show all these things, that we were riding dinosaurs
so we were
way back
writing, and
in.
there was a whole series of artwork in your next Sash about humans writing. It was called Dinotopia. I remember seeing the art
Mhm.
about 20 years ago. And so, were they? You said they were giving. Were they giving birth to dinosaurs
Yes.
or humans?
No, to their own
Their
species,
own
but
species. Okay.
we've always been told that they laid eggs, right?
Right.
they're
Right.
they're reptilians, but that would show that they're mammals if they gave birth to their young,
Right.
and actually nursed them, so that they're mammals. So
So that makes sense because the raptor that saved the humans at Dulce, he was part of a species that took human wives. They were not monogamous; they were
mhm.
polygamous and or polyamorous. Not sure, but basically, their wives they could copulate and impregnate them, but for some reason, the children came out looking like raptors. They didn't look human at all, but they still contained the DNA of both the mother and father. Your turn,
Oh,
Sasha.
in the anthropological stuff that I've been studying, there's a story, very well documented with historical documents, about how the King of Portugal hired 250 German from Bavaria soldiers, and they each took their wives and they went to the Portuguese side of the Amazon to stand off the Spanish who were on the other side, and Native Americans attacked them, burned their ships, and they found shelter in this cave. And they worked their way down through the cave system, and they encountered lots of civilizations and species,
Mhm.
including dinosaurs. On the inner Earth. Eventually, they finally got all the way down to Antarctica, through many, many generations. And the Bodlanders, who were running things down there, let them settle. But there's very good historical accounts of uh, people that went underground and had
Mhm.
records and said they ran into reptilians under the earth.
Isn't
So
that something?
maybe they're friendly. Maybe it's kind of like a Jules Verne thing where everything's sent to the earth, and they're actually not bad. They're not going to eat
They,
it.
they let the settlers pass through their turf, but not settle where they were.
What do you think of Admiral Byrd's description of going into the inner Earth when he was flying over the North and South poles?
Oh,
A
this
lot of
is
people.
yeah. This is totally well documented. We
Hmm.
now have government documents that say, there's especially under this South Pole area, there's an artificial sun, uh,
Hmm.
and we find that on most planets. It's way safer to be under the ground than the astronomical disturbances and climatic disturbances don't affect them, and it's a safer place to operate from. And it makes total sense. Even Star Trek trekkers go underground when they first make planetfall.
Sure.
It's the bird was ultimately silenced. The World War II wasn't the end of the fight at all. The head Nazis, including Hitler, were transported by great big submarines as well as by their round wing craft to Antarctica, and the Bodlanders let them on condition of peace. settle, gave them a piece of land, helped them set up as long as they wouldn't bring any war. And the Bodlanders did protect the Nazis in New Schwabenland who came with their round-wing craft. They sunk the Pine Island. They killed 64 Marines. They shot down a lot of the pilots, and Byrd turned tail and came home. We have extensive records that have been released that say they're there, and it was only that we were saved by friendly ETs, particularly from Serpo, who helped Caldwell and others make our own round-wing craft, and that was the beginning of our clandestine military that now is one of the spacefaring races.
So,
right.
2 minutes to break. Okay, so what do you what's your thoughts on Byrd?
I think he did find something, and I think he was silenced about it. Everything that I've read indicates that he did find this incredible place. And I think there's been some photographs, satellite photographs, that show there's a hole in the South Pole. And I can't find them. I saw one years ago, and I cannot find it anywhere on the internet.
I've got some up on my site that I've been putting up. Yeah, there's a no-fly zone. One of the most recent things we got was this child was dying and needed help and needed to be flown over an area. And it's an absolute no-fly, and the medic said, "Heck with this! I'm going to save this kid's life." And they did save the kid's life, but they flew over the hole. They saw it, and they were really, you're dead if you mention it. It was what the military told them. But the medic said, "Kill me if you need to. I will always try to save a child."
Right, yeah.
Well, we're coming up on our break, so we'll be back in about 5 seconds.
Dr. Sasha Lesson and Janet Kira Lesson.
Aloha, we are back. Janet Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson and Betsey Lewis, and we're talking about reptilians and dinosaurs, and are they intelligent? Have they evolved? Have they devolved? Would they be ruling us? Okay, Sasha, would you like to say?
Well, we're gonna get Betsey to tell us all kinds of things. What I learned from my mentor, Irving Ben Marcus, is that when I'm talking, I don't learn much, but when I shut up, I can listen and learn plenty. And I'm going to learn something from Betsey this time.
Okay, Betsey,
take it away. Okay, well, it's kind of interesting what John Lear had told Art Bell, and I don't know if you're aware of this interview. It took place in November of 2003. And what's really interesting is that I know a lot of people think that John Lear was up in the night and making all this stuff up, but he claimed that he said that there are 18 different alien species that we know of monitoring the Earth. And he said some are good, some are hostile, some are indifferent to us, which makes sense. And then he said, all we know is that the Greys are cybernetic organisms, glorified robots, if you will. And he said they've been working for, these other aliens monitoring us through abductions. He said we are able to find out what the experiment is all about, except that we have been externally corrected about 65 times. I would say he meant genetically, and that the aliens refer to us as containers. Now, that's kind of interesting. Is that containers for our souls? And what are they doing with it?
That's fascinating.
Excuse me.
That goes along with the idea that we are with simulation theory. Basically.
Right. And, another thing that he said, which is really interesting, and, there have been hundreds of thousands of people that have disappeared on our planet. And I know some of it is murder, some of children are abducted, but there's been some really weird things where people just vanish, no trace. And there's been a couple of authors that have been on Coast to Coast talking about this, especially around the national parks. But what John Lear said that in 1938 we lost over 200 aircraft due to UFO hostilities and thousands of soldiers in all kinds of different actions with these aliens. And he said since that time, several 100,000 civilians have just disappeared without a trace, and several thousand of those were eliminated by us because of their chance encounter with aliens, which we could not afford to have publicized. But also he talked about human mutilations, which I have never heard of, but he said they are similar to cattle mutilations. And I was wondering, have you heard about these human mutilations?
Yes, absolutely.
Have you?
Yes, we've got some pictures from people from South America that have been sending them to us. We've got things from Michael Sala's book where he documents wherever our aircraft have fired upon some of the alien craft. The pilot has been killed, and these are aces from Korea who could know how to dodge the other planes. The anti-gravs are way faster. This one fellow pilot, somebody else was supposed to load the missiles in his plane. He was ordered to fire on the bogey. He and his partner in another plane. The missiles weren't delivered to his plane, so he couldn't fire. His partner did, and the alien craft or whatever it was fired back, and then it destroyed his partner, and then it flipped around sort of flipped him off, and went on. He felt that his life was saved because he didn't actually fire upon it. We've had like hundreds of our fighters have disappeared or disintegrated.
Well, that doesn't sound too friendly, does it?
Right, but you're talking about the mutilations. I have heard about human mutilations, and when you look at the story about Dulcie,
oh yeah,
where they did manipulations and mutilations, and
Phil Schneider,
right? And so I think there are certain species that look at as like we're cattle. Some species look at humans like it's their great bordello. Because apparently the humans can handle their different genitalia, and they can actually copulate and give sexual pleasure to other species. So we've been looking at all those things because we're not afraid to look at it. And so what did you find out about the human mutilations?
Well, I've read stories about them, a couple of stories that were just, really scary, but who knows if it was the aliens or if it was human caused. Now, that's kind of interesting because if John Lear was saying that, our own humans took out other humans because of what they knew, made it look like it was alien, then, I think that's been going on a lot, especially with the cattle mutilations. I think that some of it's alien, but I think, with all these stories of helicopters, unmarked helicopters that have been in the area of, the cattle mutilations, that's kind of interesting to me. And I know that when I was working with Tom Adams he was out of Paris, Texas. He was doing all kinds of research on the cattle mutilations, that he said a lot of the cattle were marked with infrared, and whoever was doing it would come back at night and they would, they were marked. They could see them with infrared, special glasses, and would pick them out and transport them. And a lot of these cattle were transported, I think, to military bases and then brought back to another area and then, just dropped from a great distance because they would find, their bones were broken. They knew that they were dropped from some distance. And, of course, their blood was drained, which was, kind of a normal thing. But also, there were no footprints, so that would explain if they were airlifted somewhere and then dropped, then certainly there wouldn't be any tracks, and that was the normal cattle mutilation out there. And I know they're not going on as much. They're still happening a little bit. There's been a lot of cat mutilations that Linda Moulton Howe's been reporting on for a long time.
Cats, please, anything but cats.
I know. Why? Well, I think that's human caused, not alien. I really don't think so.
Caused by aliens. What are your theories as to why it's happening from some of the things I've read is that they're just checking to see the progress of pollutants and how they're interacting with us. Perhaps they're terraforming the planet to be suitable to their own qualifications. And so what effect does the terraforming have on the indigenous life forms on Earth?
That's a good thought, Janet. That's an excellent thought because, I've been thinking that these chemtrails, which have been going on since the 90s, I've been watching them, photographing them, and we're told that they have barium, they have aluminum in them, they have all kinds of horrible things in them that, is being put all over the earth and is causing, I think, it's geoengineering, and they're causing our planet to heat. And, these clouds hold in heat. I've always thought that. And I thought, maybe they're doing something in connection with these reptilians. And maybe they want the Earth to heat. And maybe these reptilians are going to come back on the surface of the planet. I know it's a scary thought. I don't know.
It's been super hot.
It has, and it's getting hotter,
Go ahead, Sasha.
One of my colleagues, Blue Cloud, has been following a number of sites that say, where are the chemtrails specifically, and when are they happening, and so forth. And what he says is there's some pretty clear evidence that they are specifically at dawn and dusk masking the visibility of the planet Nibiru, which is now in our skies, and that our clandestine admiralty is fully aware of it, but they're deliberately hiding the presence in our skies of Nibiru and its moons.
Yeah, I think that's possible too. I know Nancy, leader of Zeta Talk's been talking about that for a long time, that's what the chemtrails are. But I think they have another nefarious type of agenda for the planet. And I think what they're doing, look what's going on with the wildfires all over, the drought. I mean, all of a sudden we get these torrential rains all over, and our whole world is just crazy. Now, Planet X could be a part of that, but I still think that humans are interfering with what's going on with our planet right now, too. So I think it's twofold. I really do.
Well, if Planet X is coming around, and in previous times, different species went underground and they lived there for a while, and now it's coming back, and some people say it's already heading out again. It came through, but apparently when it comes through, it creates all the planets in the solar system heat up. So that might be kind of like the changing of the guard, where what was in comes up, and what's up goes down.
Well, Andy Lloyd says that all the planets, Venus, Mars, are getting hotter too, because our binary star, which is a red dwarf called Nemesis, is coming closer, and all the planets are heating up at this time.
Yeah, that's interesting you'd say that, because our solar system is the only one that doesn't have a binary star, and every other solar system that NASA has, investigated has two stars. And it would make sense that there would be something else out there, a brown dwarf, a failed star that comes through our solar system that somehow got kicked out of our solar system and comes back, and in a certain pattern every, I've heard different amounts of time, 3,000 years. I don't know. Is it more than that?
It was 3,600 years. And then during one of the passes when Moses' Exodus took place, it sped up to 3,450 years that it comes through. And it's here now. The evidence is overwhelming.
The way it orbits is normal. It is that far out. It's going to be, you see both of them in the sky at the same time. But maybe that is a normal way for planets to orbit, the way Nibiru with Nemesis orbits around Solaris that has Earth.
Right.
Planets. So that's interesting. So what I was saying is when the planets come in and they start heating up, a lot of the species on the surface can no longer tolerate the heat. So that's when they go down, and some of the species that are more tolerant to excessive heat might be coming up. and so we see the changing of the guard, and that might be a normal. We're looking at the greater cycles within the cycle. So there's like a 28,000 year cycle within a 360,000 year cycle, something like that. I don't have the exact numbers of the yugas, something like that. So maybe this is a normal cycle that we're just going through, and because we're June flies and we have such a small life spans, we don't have the written history of how these changes are really natural.
Some of my remote viewer friends talk about not just the disturbances on the surface, but that way lots of anti-grav craft have been flying out of Agartha, out of the inner Earth now, and you can't have too many of them going at one time, according to Leith, because they take too much of the piezoelectric energy of Earth. But there's been a constant stream, my remote viewers say, of people leaving inner Earth for outer space because there's the anticipation of really heavy-duty stuff happening on Earth on the one hand. On the other hand, there's other people like the Linkage Institute that say the ETs that are concerned with our survival have corrected for this and shifted the time line so that we can survive.
I think so. It could be another extinction event, and I think Earth has had many extinction events, and we may just be going through that again. But what's kind of interesting to me is I think aliens have lied to us, and I don't know which ones, but so many people have been told that they've been chosen for a mission, right?
Yes.
They've been told that the Earth is going to go through some huge change. Even Native Americans claim that they have been contacted and that humans are evolving, that we're going to change. They're here to help us. So, there's just the human species is going to die because we're killing ourselves with our pollution and greed and everything else. So there's all these different things. And I know Nancy Leader predicted years and years ago that the Earth was going to shift. And we've heard this for a long time. I know that Earth right now is going through some big changes. I don't know if it's going to shift like, people have been told. But I think it's going to go through some big changes. And I've been predicting all these earthquakes, and I've been predicting just all this weird extreme weather that we're having. And we're seeing sinkholes forming, especially in Siberia with all the warming because of the methane coming through and causing these huge sinkholes to form. So there's just a lot going on with our planet right now. And the mysterious booms that are going on. You've probably heard about all the mysterious booms all over the place that they haven't been happening in the last month or two, but, it was getting pretty crazy, and it would seem like a huge earthquake would take place after the booms were heard in some part of the United States. I know some other parts of the world have heard them too, and they have them on the internet. If you go to YouTube, you can hear all these weird booms, but I wonder if that isn't something going on underground, some kind of construction going on. And I know that there are supposed to be bunkers, military bunkers all over the place. And we have the ability to core into the Earth with these huge machines. It's just incredible what they can do. So it makes me wonder if that's not going on.
Well, apparently they can drill pretty deep and not make a lot of noise, but there's, we don't know what's going on down there.
No, we don't.
We don't have a ticket. We're not the in crowd. We didn't win the lotto for the underground installations, although I bet in two of them. One was an abduction experience, and one was I was invited to explore one as part of my job when I lived in Pittsburgh. And they had this gigantic underground installation, and you were on a little golf cart as they took you from place to place, and there were so many parts of it. It was just like endless tunnels and caverns going this way and that way, and it was all carved like they do with the big giant machines, and smooth. The walls were smooth. I was just amazed, but then they had these large doors, and they'd say no public access. And then
Ooh.
the tour guide said, well, back there, that's the government, and it's supposed to be, 20 times the size as this. And then you go to another part, and that was huge. So something's been going on for years about storing. They were storing their banking data. They worked for a major investment federated investors, and so they had to keep all their files for just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Robert Evans was just on our show the other day, and he was saying he's documenting many of these bases with pictures taken of Humvees and Abrams tanks and seed banks and rich people having their own places underground, preparing for some kind of extinction type event and planning to survive while the rest of the survivors are rounded up and brought in FEMA camps for extinction or slave labor. I hope it ain't true, but he's got some data.
And then my ex, and not my final thing, I'll pass it back to you, Betsy. My ex-boyfriend, who's now deceased, said he worked in the Crystal City under Washington, D.C., and he said it's huge down here. It's very lovely. They have malls and restaurants and movie theaters. It's just like above ground, but it goes many floors deep. And it's
wow! Isn't that interesting? A couple of years ago, the White House was doing some kind of underground something or other, and they had everything cordoned off. They didn't allow anybody there. It was just all top secret. They wouldn't say what was going on underneath the White House. So, I wouldn't doubt it at all.
One of the things that the other alternative things, the Republicans are saying, look, the Clintons tried to steal all these things when they moved out of the White House. But the understory that we heard from our whistleblowers is, no, they were taking the American treasures and preserve them underground for when the catastrophe wiped out Washington, D.C., that these treasures of our history would be preserved. So that's an alternative explanation on Hillary wasn't stealing it. She was just trying to preserve it.
Okay. All righty. I posted something on Facebook about the election, and it's Harrison Ford, and he's holding a sign that don't vote for anyone, and someone said, well, I would vote for a Wookiee, though. So I think probably that's the best choice, a Wookiee.
Vote for Wookiee.
Yeah. Chewbacca is going to be our next president.
Chewie for president. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, it would be interesting to vote for, if everybody could vote from their heart and vote for what they believe instead of for these candidates that they force upon us in a way. Either you vote for them or you don't go vote at all.
Well, times have changed so much. When Dennis Kucinich, the only peace candidate, mentioned that he had a contact experience, he was out of the race. Everybody thought he was crazy. Now we have John Podesta, Hillary hinting, and even the trumpet hinting that there is ET contact, and the press corps. When they asked the question before, if you asked, what about the ETs, and you bothered the president about it, you would no longer be invited to presidential press corps briefings. But now they are answering it. And the basic question that we're asking is, was the president briefed? And that's the big question that Podesta wants answered.
Interesting. That will be interesting. I'm not going to hold my breath, though, Sasha.
Right. Disclosure means often just more disclosure, more lies.
Exactly.
We have 2 minutes to the break. So what's something that you really want to let our listeners know before the break comes up? 1 minute to break. Okay. Perhaps so. Yeah, let's just wrap up this segment and then we're on to our last segment. What would you like to tell our listeners, Betsy?
Oh, well, my book will be out in about 2 weeks, Ancient Serpent Gods, on Amazon. And I've got some other books that are available on predictions. And so check out my website at betseylewis.com. And Betsey is spelled Betsey and then LEWIS.com.
Excellent. We'll be back
Thank you.
in about 3 minutes.
Yeah, and we definitely want to talk about ghosts and talking to the spirits of those who have left their bodies.
Okay. Lots of blessings. This is Divine Paradigm on KCR Radio. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
And join the conversation live in our chat room at www.kcorradio.com. Now, back to Divine Paradigm with your enlightened hosts, Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin.
Aloha, and yes, we are back. Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha and Betsey Lewis on Divine Paradigm. And Sasha has to say something, and I have a question, but go ahead, you first.
Okay, one of the things that we have now that we've are letting experiencers come out of the closet and tell their stories, what their actual experience are. We're dealing with a class of people who are freeing themselves from the conventional matrix that most people live under, and people who are free in that way feel all the phenomena. And one of the most interesting things is that near-death experiences, dreams that you get, powerful dreams, and the ghosts that appear to people, the discarnates, are all part of something that are there to be experienced by any of us once we drop the matrix. And so I really liked your comments on contact with the dead, Betsey.
Well, I'm going to mention this, that I know I've read stories of people that have had near-death experiences in DEs, and they claim that they have seen their deceased relatives with aliens on the other side. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Whitney Stryver said that a lot of the contact experiences, how their friends or relatives. Yes, continue. Go ahead.
Well, speaking of Whitley, I know that he said that I think he was the one that he was told that the aliens said they had every right to abduct us. And that sounds like they own us, that they created us, they are our creators. And that's kind of interesting. But in so many of these abduction cases, people are taken out of their bodies. Betty, Andreas, and Luca described it with their husband, Bob Luca, how they were pulled up out of their bodies. The Hesses, who talk about their Mojave incident, book written by Ron Felber, they said that they actually felt themselves being drawn out of their bodies and taken up into this mothership, this gigantic, huge ship that was over the Mojave Desert in 1989. Now, why the military never showed up during this whole time, and there were several types of aliens that abducted them. And another very strange thing about all of this is that the aliens were taking something out of the ground. They could hear it. They could see that it was like pulling something out. And there's rare minerals. What do they call them that they use? Maybe that's what they're pulling out of the desert, which is kind of interesting. But to get back to your original question, I think aliens are interdimensional that know how to go into this other dimension. Or maybe they know they know so much about us, maybe they are creating holographic images, and, it makes you wonder, mind control, what are they actually doing with us, with our minds, with our souls?
I in my Anunnaki studies, I found several cuneiform tablets that actually show Enki, their great scientist, with a machine, and it actually describes he flies over an area with his Vimana. He gets where there's they were particularly looking for platinum and gold. He comes down, and he has his assistants surround this machine with radioactive shields. It's got something, and he's got some kind of a device which is radioactive because they're shielding themselves from it. That can probe, particularly for platinum or gold. At least this was back. Some 400,000 years ago. But we've got, and then later this was dictated to the Sumerians, described to them 6,000 years ago, and they made these cuneiform tablets showing this machine. It's on my websites.
Yeah, perhaps we're just one big shopping mall for the extraterrestrials, and they're all a bunch of Ferengis.
Oh, no.
And humans are just a commodity, and let's go. Just like we have cows and sheep and pigs and chickens.
Yeah. They see us as dogs, maybe, to breed and experiment on and do whatever they want. And I think it's, maybe it's time we rebel.
Yeah, and it's just like Australians say about New Zealand, or New Zealanders say about Australians. That they like breeding with us too.
Oh yeah, well, we're not going to go there anyway. I agree. Now you had a very interesting question. You sent me 22 questions. I love them. Where is that? Oh, why do you believe religious visions are connected to these reptilian beings?
That's been going on for a long time, and you don't hear about these religious type things. Once in a while you hear maybe about a statue that's bleeding, bleeding tears or crying, but you don't hear about these things that happened several years ago. In 1917, the Phantom of Portugal, with the 3 children that saw the angel first in April of, I believe it was 1916, and then the Blessed Virgin Mary would come to them in kind of a holographic type image, and hover over this tree, and she would show up every month from May to October, always on the 13th day at solar noon exactly. And they said that whenever she showed up, people wouldn't see her, but the children did. But she would come in. They would see orbs coming in. They would hear booms. Whenever she showed up, there would be this strange mist that would come in. There was just all kinds of, paranormal type things happening and anomalies. But on October 13th, which is really strange, all these people had gathered to see this miracle. Thousands of people in Fantamo with the children and everything. And suddenly it had been raining all day, and all of a sudden at solar noon, the clouds part and they see what looks like, they think it's the sun, but it's silver. It's not golden. It has a sharp edge. They described it. It was huge. It made everything go dark in their area. Nobody else saw it in the world. Nothing happened with the sun, according to astronomers, but only in this area within, I think, a 15-mile radius, people saw this. But it started shifting and rotating, and I think it was a giant UFO. And yeah, and the people that had been soaked that day, standing in the rain, they were dried because it looked like the sun was coming down and going to destroy them. And everybody became dry, instantly dry. The earth was dry again, but they all described it silver or pewter with a sharp edge. That doesn't sound like the sun. And how could anybody stare at the sun that long if it was the sun? So I think it was aliens that created holographic images. The people that were there witnessing, they saw Mary come in, and then they saw the infant Jesus, which morphed into the adult Jesus. And people, I guess in the 60s, saw the same thing in Zaytun, Egypt, where this image of the Blessed Virgin Mary showed up on top of this temple. And it was the same type of thing, like holographic images, birds coming in, luminous birds. And so I think that, I think probably the Mideast is being controlled right now by reptilian beings, the Al-Jinn, as they're called.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I wanted to know what that was about. Tell us about the Al-Jinn.
Well, my cousin's over there. He's not in Iraq. He's in Iran right now. But he's been looking into the jinn, and he's told me a few scary stories about people that have seen it. But they can be good and bad. And they're supposed to live underground, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? And it comes from the stories of genies that, you're granted a wish and, you've got to watch out what the wish is. But it's a legend that's been going on for, at least hundreds of years. And it seems that these creatures can be deceptive, harassing. They can be, they live in a supernatural realm that is near the earth, yet not part of it. Some of them dwell inside the earth, which I thought was interesting, according to legend. They abduct human beings temporarily in their own space, time, or dimension. They are also, they could be from other dimensions, but there's many people that have written about them in stories, incredible stories about them. So, good or evil, I don't know. But I guess the people in the Mideast, in Iraq and Iran, they believe in the jinn. And they are afraid of the jinn. I mean, my cousin, he said he was going to go into this one place that was supposed to be haunted by the jinn. Of course, nothing happened, but I told him, be careful. You don't know what you're messing with, what kind of entities.
Yeah, we know these people that someone, Zechariah Sitchin, talked about how the Moroni, the angel that spoke to Joseph Smith, probably as part of Marduk's overall program of start different opposing religions to fight each other, so that the us Earthlings don't realize that we're being manipulated. But that Moroni, this angel, kept saying the same thing again and again. And Joe Smith said, "How come you keep saying the same thing again?" And the angel replied with the same thing again. It sounds like a holographic projection.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been going for a long time, deceiving us and controlling us through religious type visions, and just think of all the visions that people have had.
Well, that's probably as part of their defense of their bases or whatever their property. Because if you put up a hologram to guard something and people don't realize it's not real, it might keep away the forces. And they even use that in Star Trek. They encounter a hologram. Oh, it's not really real; it's a hologram. Mm-hmm. So it's probably been going on. Remember the one of the early Mars probes, and it was Phoebus, and there was some kind of automatic defense mechanism.
Phoebus 2, yeah.
Phoebus 2, and it blew up took out the
missile, took it down.
Right.
Oh wow, yeah.
These are the original sites where the Anunnaki settled. In the when they from touchdown.
Bases on Luna and Mars.
Right, but what you're talking about, he's over there in the Middle East. They might be encountering some ancient automatic systems that are still in operation. That's why don't go underground. And then we have the story of Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh encountered those type of things all the time. So be careful when you go underground or into mountains and stuff. They might still be operational.
Yeah, with Gilgamesh, when he finally had finally found the elixir, Ziusudra showed him where the elixir was, and it said, a serpent ate the stuff, the magic plant, before Gilgamesh could take it. Oh, we know what a serpent is. Again, we're back to this, the Naga race that's protecting its secrets.
Yeah. And when you think about what's going on in the Mideast, Syria, and ISIS, and the chaos and the anger and the hate, what's stirring that up? Are these reptilians, the Al Jinn, are they creating all this for their own agenda, or just watching us, trying to kill ourselves? Maybe that's something that they want to do, and so far they seem to be doing it, with these terrorists,
it seems obvious that Bush, Rumsfeld, Cheney, and Condoleezza Rice, who basically involved us in the war in Iraq, touched off a series of events that resulted in ISIS, and that it all seems like it's being orchestrated by their controllers.
But it even goes back further than that. We have Enki and Lil and Marduk and Nana, and they were very, at war with each other, and they were trying to figure out who could end up top dog. So Enlil, one of his major systems of psychological manipulation of humanity was creating the religions, and he basically created the major religions to keep us in opposition of each other. And so we've had endless wars for hundreds of thousands of years, and the only one that loses are the human beings, because we're just pawns. That's why they created the chessboard. The chessboard is symbolic of what they do with humanity, and that's why that wonderful movie in the 50s, Jason and the Argonauts, had the gods on Olympus looking down, and they took Jason and they made him like a big figure on their chessboard, and they would move him, and he would encounter things. That's actually what's going on if you really look at it. We have been manipulated. We're so stupid. We think that we can vote for one faction or the other and actually get, a democracy. There's no such thing. That's fiction. The religions are fiction. There are truths within that, but there's no la truth. And these things like you're going to get 40 virgins and all these things are just, they're instilling patriotism and getting these poor people doing horrendous things against their fellow man and woman, especially women, subjugating women and doing horrendous things to women, and to get some kind of award in heaven. And all it is you get to go back into the cycle of rebirth, go back to the war games. You never get out.
It was the woman that ate of the knowledge, the apple of knowledge, that it wasn't man. We're the ones that are always curious and getting ourselves into trouble, but we're curious and we want to know. I think we kind of blew everything for the serpents when we ate the apple of knowledge.
What if they would have just listened to Eve, who had gained the knowledge, and then we'd be a balanced civilization.
Tiamat, the original Eve, totally blew Yahweh's mind. When he came over to Enki's place, which was next door in Basra, she walked right up to him and said, "Hi, I'm Tiamat. Look what I made. I made this table." And he was aghast. "Oh my gosh, these creatures that you've created are just as smart as our kids. You've got to control them, or they're gonna. Oh, there's only 1,000 of us, and if these smart beings can run us over, you stop it. Go to Africa, breed, make slaves, but get out of here."
That's the version of the biblical version. So,
Jan, it was interesting that you mentioned Jason and the Argonauts, because I think I watched that when it first came out when I was young, and I always felt that I was being watched by not God, but gods, the invisible beings, and that we were being controlled. And it was kind of weird that I thought that, being so young, and it was just something that I felt, and I still feel it.
The movie theaters. We have to look up what year that was.
Yeah, the young are less tied into the matrix. You ask any little kid, "Hey, tell me what happened before you were born," and they'll tell you up to a certain age. So your young intuitions are very likely to be accurate, I think.
But I felt like I was being protected rather than control. I've always felt like I had guides and some force that was saying, "Well, you can't really come out with who you are yet because it's not time." That was 1963. So I was born in 54. I was 9 years old when I saw Jason and the Argonauts in the movie theater, and I thought it was great with these gods.
Right.
Well, I think the synchronicities that makes you, Betsey, and Janet, and I, and Tina, our producer, all converge on and discuss these materials could not be accidental. It's all part of, I think, a much, much larger integrated multi-universes.
I believe so, too. What's interesting, I'm going to throw this out, it's kind of changing a little bit, but I wanted to mention that how UFOs suddenly showed up during the time, 1940s, when we were experimenting with the atomic bomb in New Mexico. There was Roswell in 1947. That was I think, July of 1947. Just before that, June 27th, Kenneth Arnold saw the UFOs over Washington when he was flying, I think, from Washington to Idaho. Back home. So all these UFOs, and you would think that aliens from another planet, another galaxy, they wouldn't care. We can blow up ourselves. Who cares? But if they live underground, they would certainly care what we're doing on top of the Earth, and if we have the ability to destroy the planet.
It seems that nuclear explosions affect the entire continuum. So, yes, it would affect things in the physical realm, but also the other dimensions in the spiritual realm. So They're very concerned about that type of activity, and that's probably why they showed up in mass. And we're going to be talking to Paul Hellyer this weekend at the Alien Cosmic Expo. They're doing a Saturday morning whole disclosure. And
wow.
A lot of documentation how they've stopped the nuclear warheads, so they've changed them. They've been interfering with our nukes because they don't want us. I don't think they're going to allow a nuclear explosion. I don't think it's ever going to happen. So I could be wrong. But
in Russia that they activated a missile silo, and then they stopped it in time, but it was actually activated by a UFO. So yeah. What are they doing? Are they trying to scare us so we don't do anything? I don't know. That's kind of scary if they're activating. Deactivating's fine, but activating's not so good.
The day the Earth stood still, the original one, they wanted to show power that they could turn off everything.
Right.
And they said stop. And I think that we're being invited to become a peaceful race. And I'm just encouraging everybody to do that. Just stop your own violence and become peaceful one at a time. And now 10 at a time, and now thousands at a time. Okay, we have 2 minutes. Final word,
goodness.
everybody. That was so fast.
It did go fast.
We want your final words, how people can get hold of you, what your books are, and what your sites are.
Oh, okay. It's betseylewis.com, and that's pretty easy. BETSEY. Lewis is LEWIS.com. I have my Earth News One blog that I have on my website, which I tell everything that's going on with the sun, any type of earthquakes that I think are building. I've been really spot on with these earthquakes lately, and volcanic eruptions, because I think it's all tied in. It's all part of what Mother Earth is doing. I've got my book coming out, Ancient Serpent Gods. That's coming out in the next 2 weeks on Amazon. I've got Earth Energy. I've got Angels, Aliens, and Prophecy. I can't even remember all of my books. I've got Mystic Revelations of 13 and Communicating with the Other Side. So I've got quite a few books that you can check out there. But thank you so much for inviting me on your show again. It's been great.
It's been fun. Thanks for coming back. And
thank you.
Whenever you get another book, for sure. So what are you writing next?
Oh, boy, I don't know.
Okay, well, that's good. No surprises.
We love having this opportunity to rap with you, and are so grateful to Tina Marie to let us have these conversations that help us understand and help the world understand what's really coming down.
And that's the end of another show. Thank you very much. This has been Divine Paradigm on KCOR Radio.
In 3, 2, 1.
Until next week, we must leave the world of the divine paradigm. But always remember, you all exist on more than one plane or dimension. And there is a shift coming. A shift to universal consciousness. A shift to the divine paradigm.
Divine paradigm. Divine paradigm.
For more information on the divine paradigm, as well as the hosts, Dr. Sasha Lessin and Janet Kira Lessin, please visit their website at aquarianradio.com. Divine Paradigm, live every Tuesday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Your transformational future is at hand.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.